All right, first, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Sheri Pollock. I am a Village of Oregon resident and the Municipal Judge for the Village and Township of Oregon. On behalf of the Oregon Area Progressives, I welcome you to the 2024 Spring Election Candidate Forum. OAP is a local collaborative group committed to organizing support for a progressive policy agenda. OAP's mission is to build and strengthen the grassroots organization by education and empowering people to act on local, state, and national issues. Today, OAP is sponsoring this forum for the candidates for Oregon Village Board Trustee. Following the candidate forum, Carlene Beschen will be providing information about the 2 constitutional amendment referenda questions that are also on the April ballot. Before we get going, first I want to thank all the candidates for participating. All were invited, however, Allison Rosner was unable to attend. A big thank you also goes to OCA Media for live streaming this event on YouTube. The recording will be available later for viewing on OCA Media's YouTube channel. And last but certainly not least, thank you to you attendees for your interest in this important race and being informed voters. We will begin the forum by offering each candidate 1 minute for an opening statement. Then we will proceed with questions, the question and answer session. At the conclusion, each candidate will have one final 1 minute closing argument. For the question and answer session, I will read questions from the audience to the candidates. To cover as many topics as possible and offer equal courtesy to each candidate will have approximately 2 minutes to answer the question, and they will be the order of the candidates will be chosen by randomly. Because this is a forum and not a debate, there will be no rebuttals during the question and answer session. We plan to end the question and answer session at about 2:15 p.m. Following that, Carlene Beschen will provide information to you about the 2 referenda constitutional amendment questions that you will see on the next ballot. Audience members, you received a piece of paper when you entered for writing your questions, and hopefully you have already turned them in. If you write a question during the event, please hold it up and one of the OAP members will deliver it to me. Questions will be edited for clarity and to avoid duplications. One final note, I ask that each of you be respectful to our candidates and not interject commentary during the event. So let's get started. So we're going to start with Sara Dewey. If you would introduce yourself and do your 1 minute opening statement, and then we'll go right down the line to Tom, Lynn, Amanda, and Mike. Sara?
Okay. My name is Sara Dewey. I've lived in the village for about 17 years. And since, can you hear me now?
All right, you need to have your mic. I guess we need our mics almost right by our mouth.
I don't think the mics are on. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
No,
Can
we're
you hear
fine.
me?
All right.
Okay. I paused it. Okay. So I've lived here for about 17 years, and shortly after moving here, I became involved in various projects and issues with the community, village board, plan commission, and have over the years found some challenges. And as I've been a candidate, which I never planned to do, but here I am, knocking on doors and meeting people, I've found that a lot of people have the same or similar concerns as I do. And those mainly would be taxes and the cost of living here, voice for citizens, and I'm done. Sorry.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. My name is Tom Kirchdoerfer. I'm a candidate for the village trustee positions. I have been an active, involved community member in Oregon for over 38 years. I've been on, if I go through the resume of groups and activities that I've been involved in, I'd be way past my 1 minute. Some of my most recent activity, I was a leader in developing and creating the food pantry and the new board of directors that we put into place, and the new organizational structure and the building of the building. Food pantry is a great example of what people do when they come together and work in a combined and positive manner to come up with solutions. I've enjoyed living in Oregon. I have a strong commitment to what we do and how we do things here. And I look forward to being able to continue to serve you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Hello, my name is Lynn McDaniel. First, I want to start by thanking the Oregon Area Progressives for hosting this voter forum and all of you for being informed voters and coming out to learn more about each of us. Like I said, my name is Lynn McDaniel. I was appointed onto the village board in May of 2023, and in the 10 months that I have been on the board, I have greatly enjoyed this work. I've been an active and informed board member, going to multiple village events, riding along with a police officer, riding along in a snowplow, being a part of village department head meetings, and making sure that I can be a strong advocate for those that I speak for while I'm on the board. I'm also a mother of 3 young children, and that provides me a perspective, I think, that is an advantage. I use the parks and village services each and every day, and I can use that lens when making decisions and being an informed board member, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Amanda?
Hi there. I'm going to try and speak a little louder so that people in the back of the room can hear, because the speakers are not on in the room. So my name is Amanda Peterson, and I am currently on the village board. I am running for my 4th term. I am currently the vice president of the board, and I serve as the chair of the Public Safety Committee and the Transportation Committee. At some point or another, I've served on most of the committees and boards that the village has, and I work hard every day to make sure that I'm listening to the voices of all residents and being responsive to their needs. And I'm still learning, even on my 4th term. I don't know everything, and I'm open to listening, and I make myself available to anybody for their thoughts and concerns.
Thank you. Mike?
Hi, I'm Mike Munch. I've lived in the village for 20 years, previously served on the village board, and I'm want to get back on the board to address fiscal responsibility. The board is planning a lot of spending for the village, which will double our sewer and water bills and vastly increase our taxes. The board's method of trying to be fiscally responsible is to grow the village as fast as possible, which puts it at odds with most residents' desires when they moved here or lived here to live in a small town. I believe that we need to expand the avenues we have to the village board has to communicate with residents, and we need to get residents informed and involved before the board makes decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start with our first question. I do have several questions from the audience, and there's a few general topics, so they will be edited based on the questions asked. I'm going to start with one. Many of the questions the audience has regards taxes and spending. So I'm going to ask the question, the capital improvement plan for the village was completed with several major projects planned for the next few years, including a new senior center and a larger fire EMS facility. Borrowing to cover these purchases is commonplace. People do it to buy cars, houses, and other big ticket items every day. Here are the questions. How would you define what is reasonable debt for the village when taking on these projects? If the village should not take on debt, what projects, services, or upgraded equipment would you propose be canceled? And finally, with all the major projects happening in the village, how would you suggest village trustees and staff ensure that the public knows what's going on and has the opportunity to give input? So a lot of questions for 2 minutes.
Sorry, just the questions, please.
Yep, the questions again. How would you define what is reasonable debt for the Village of Oregon when taking on these projects? If the village should not take on debt, what projects, services, or upgraded equipment would you propose be canceled? With all the major projects happening in the village, how would you suggest village trustees and staff ensure that the public knows what's going on and has opportunities to give input? We're going to start with Mike. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, the village is intending to spend $114 million in their capital improvement plan over the next 7 years. That's more than a new library every year in terms of the cost to the village. We need to look at those projects and decide which of them can be reasonably deferred. Some of them that come to mind for me is an expansion of the fire department and the purchase of a ladder truck. The argument for having those is that as buildings go to 4 stories, that we need a ladder truck in order to service those 4-story buildings. The village board has it in its authority to pass an ordinance that says that no buildings will be larger than 3 stories for the next 15 years and defer those expenses, which would total roughly $20 million for the future to hold taxes down. We need to look at projects that we're doing, like spending $6.5 million on J.C. Park, and think about, well, maybe we need to keep residents in their homes as more of a priority. We need to go item by item through our capital improvement plan and decide which of those items can reasonably be deferred for the future. What is reasonable debt? Reasonable debt is the amount of debt that the village can take on and keep residents in their homes and keep renters affording their apartments. And right now, we're going to exceed that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Lynn.
So the capital improvement plan is a plan in and of itself. It is a roadmap, if you will, of what the board is prioritizing as far as projects and obviously costs coming in the future. But it is very important that the board constantly be looking and editing that to adjust to the everyday needs of village residents and the economic situation that we find ourselves in. Nothing is getting cheaper. We all know that from our household budgets. And so I think it's important that the village board is constantly reviewing and revising that. And that's exactly what we've been doing in the last couple of months while I've been on the board. We've been looking at what specific costs come in at as far as bids, and then figuring out if that's a reasonable price we want to pay. A great example of that is while I was on the park board, we ended up extending a portion of phase 2 for J.C. Park into a later possible phase 3 because of the cost that one of those areas of improvement was going to be. And I think that's a great way to be fiscally responsible and making sure that we're still providing quality services to residents while still continuing to grow the services that people expect of us. I also think that public information comes from visibility, being out in the community, being a part of events, and being able for people to come up and talk to you and hear your, or listen to your concerns. In the last 10 months, I've attended various village functions and heard from a lot of residents about questions and comments, concerns, ideas that they've had. And I think that that's my job as a village board member, is to be out in the community and helping people feel like they can connect to me and bring me their concerns, especially when it comes to capital improvement projects.
Thank you, Lynn. Sara.
So I just also wanted to thank the area progressives and the OCA Media for sponsoring this candidate forum. Both groups have done a lot of good within the community over the years. I'm a first-time candidate, and one of the things that's important to me is to promote transparency. And I just wanted the public to know that Amanda Peterson has been a long-standing member of the OAP, and the OAP will be campaigning for Amanda over the next month and has a desired outcome in this election. The connections between the sponsors of this candidate forum and the candidates themselves should be known.
I'm sorry, Ms. Dewey, you're not answering the question.
I know, and I'm moving on to that now.
Oh, please
with
do.
what time I have.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. So reasonable debt for the village, I believe, after speaking to many residents and knocking on doors, comes into, are they going to be taxed out of their homes? And are taxes going to continue to go up and people not be able to afford rent and taxes in our village, and we'll have to move? People are very concerned about that. People are also very concerned about participation in the process of decision making, finding out or feeling like they're finding out after the fact, after decisions have been made, and that money has been wasted in the processes that have been used to make decisions for the community.
All right, thank you. Tom?
Get back to the capital improvement plan, or the nature of the question that was asked.
Yeah.
I do want to thank Sheri, Judge Pollock, for moderating, as well as the OAP, as well as OCA Media. Getting back to the capital improvement, what is that plan? It is a plan. It is a projection out into the future. It is a conservative estimate as to what we might have occur. There is no promise that we will do any of those projects or that they will be done in the way that it's outlined or at the timing of it. The capital improvement plan is designed to include anything that we might want to do. So that making it conservative, that it's a sort of a worst case scenario. Then you back into that and you say, how do we manage that debt? There's limits that you have within the state. The village has a very conservative approach to debt. Debt makes a great sense when you borrow money for projects and activities that are extended for a long period of time, because then all of the people involved who live in the village will be helping to pay for that project or that particular asset that we're adding to it. Looking through, process that it goes with that is that every time we move into another year, all of those activities that are coming up within that plan are analyzed. And they're, look, do we have to borrow money for it? Can we find other sources for it? Can we defer it? So there's a constant pushing out and looking for solutions in relationship to that capital investment plan. It is a conservative approach. It's based on a 2% annual growth year over year. Oregon, since 2008, has exceeded 10% annual growth. So that borrowing that borrowing limit's very limited and very conservative in its estimate. I think managing that in a conservative way helps us keep those costs down and helps us keep it within the budgets that we have.
Thank you. And Amanda?
Hi, thank you. I'm just going to touch really quick on something that was mentioned earlier, and I will answer the question. As a member of the Oregon Area Progressives, I did not take part in any planning for this forum. I completely recused myself, and the questions are from the audience, which is not something that we control, so I've taken myself out of that process. The second thing is that Oregon Area Progressives as a group do not endorse any candidates. It is individuals that are given the opportunity to carry the literature of the candidates that they want to carry. Okay, regarding the capital improvement plan, reasonable debt. Every village and municipality in Wisconsin generally carries some debt. That is part of doing business and being able to make projects happen in your community. We have a self-imposed limit. The board did this. We passed a 75%. No, we're not going to. There's limits to what villages can borrow, and we've capped ourselves voluntarily at no more than 75% of that limit, and we are currently below that by quite a bit. So we are within the legal boundaries. We still have an excellent credit rating and with Moody's as a village because we are able to cover our debts, and so we're within the law there. I would not. I mean, there are certainly projects that we could delay or cancel or whatever. The capital improvement plan is exactly what my colleagues have said up here. It's just a plan, and it changes. For example, at our last board meeting, there was a street improvement project that was on the capital improvement plan years ago, and it was supposed to be $2.6 million. That was an estimate. It came in at $1.6 million. These numbers and these things change often, and it's just a plan.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the next question. I have several questions here from the audience regarding housing and the small town character of Oregon and concern about density. So I'm going to ask the question in this way. How do you envision Oregon's continued growth and keeping housing prices affordable vis-a-vis these housing projects? And what role, if any, do TIF districts have in attracting more affordable housing development? Let's start with Sara.
Okay. So small town character and charm is really defined by individuals, and many individuals within our community have a different opinion about what that consists of and what that looks like. And in order to get to that and preserve our small town character and charm, we need input from our residents. And as plans are being made, for example, the downtown master plan, we need to have residents with access to the plan from the very beginning and throughout the process. There's a lot of wording within that downtown master plan, for example, that the outcome is going to dramatically affect what our village looks like after the plan is implemented. As far as TIF districts, I think there needs to be less TIF money extended to developers in housing developments and more focus on business, and bringing in more businesses for the community will lessen the tax burden on residents when TIF money is used for housing developments, because the taxpayers are funding services while the TIF money is being paid back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda.
Could you repeat the question one more time, quick?
I'll try. How do you envision Oregon's continued growth in keeping house pricing affordable? And what role do TIF districts have in attracting more affordable housing developments?
Gotcha. So as far as keeping housing affordable, one of the things that we can do as a village board is invite more housing to be built, because when you increase supply, that helps decrease the demand, and that's one of the ways that your rents will stabilize or lower in certain cases. So any kind of housing is good housing. It helps the problem, because whether we like it or not, people are moving here. That's not something that we control. We've created this amazing village where people want to live. I just talked to a resident last night who traveled the world, lived in all these different countries. She's been kind of a traveler and had not had a lease in the last 5 years. And you know where she chose to settle? Here in Oregon. She came here and she loved this community. And so people like what we've created and they're going to move here. So we need to make the housing available to people. Growth is a good problem. We do need to manage it responsibly, but it's a happy problem to have. And as far as TIF, we can use that to encourage the housing developments we want. TIF is a tool that municipalities use, and we can say, yes, we like this development. We'd like to help you by, giving you this money that gets repaid to us. It comes back. It's an investment in the community. And the more affordable housing developments we build, the more developers that specialize in that will want to come to our community and build more. Affordable housing begets affordable housing. So those are the tools in our toolbox, and we'll use them to do that.
Thank you. Mike.
Our incentives to developers, whether it be TIF money or selling 249 North Main Street for $1, our incentives to developers are raising our taxes and making living here more expensive. It doesn't make sense. Let me explain TIF real quickly for people who don't know what it is. Village takes out a loan. It gives money to a developer to help develop the property, And while they're developing the property, they start paying taxes. The taxes come back to pay off the loan. And eventually, when the TIF closes 25 or 30 years down the line, the village has a larger tax base. The problem with that and using TIFs to encourage the development of new apartments and building complexes and things is that while the developer's paying back the loans, they're not paying for schools, they're not paying for police, they're not paying for any village services. That burden goes on to the rest of the taxpayers and raises the rest of our taxes, making the village less affordable for the people that are already living here. TIFs can make sense in attracting business. I agree with Sara. We need to get business development into Oregon in order to start lowering the tax burden on our residents. We need to stop encouraging giving money away to developers of apartment complexes, developers of housing in Oregon. As Amanda pointed out, people are going to move here anyway. We live right next to Madison. Whether we want it or not, people are going to move here. Why are we giving them money to build new apartments when they are going to do it anyway? It's just wasting taxpayer money.
Thank you. Lynn.
So affordable housing is one of those pieces of life that I think is important to reflect upon, especially because for those who need affordable housing, it's often people who are starting out in their careers, starting a family, trying to find a place to grow roots. And as a person who has just recently done that in Oregon in the last 5 years, I think it's so important that we encourage people to settle here. I plan to be here for the long term. My kids are going to grow up in this community. They're going to be active members of the community, and I can only consider that to be a positive. But we have to be able to give housing to people that is affordable, that allows them to have a life, that allows them to go downtown and spend their money at our local businesses, encouraging that commercial development. We need to see affordable housing as the first step to growing a community that is positive and active and a part of this growing culture that we've built here in Dane County. As far as TIF districts, I see it as often an advantage for the village board. When a developer is asking for TIF money, we start to be able to pull some levers and ask those developers to do things in order to receive that money. So for instance, sustainability. We have really worked hard to ask our developers specific questions about sustainability and accessibility if they're going to be asking for village funds. That allows us to start putting new ideas in their heads and in some ways requiring them to think about some of the other priorities that we're also balancing on the board that I think are also just as important. And so I think we can start to see affordable housing as a true advantage to growing this community in a way that we want it to be grown by supporting our commercial and small businesses and by using the TIF dollars to kind of incentivize our ideas.
Thank you. Tom.
Sheri, could I just ask one clarifying question? The original question was a relationship to character of the village as well as the TIF districts. And most of the conversations have been about the TIF side.
Yeah, it was how do you envision Oregon's continued growth in keeping housing prices affordable? And I mentioned vis-a-vis these concerns people have about the character of Oregon as a small town.
Okay, because there's actually two different components to that. From keeping our character, our community our village board adopted a comprehensive plan, and within that plan, it's very detailed on how do we blend neighborhoods and development, and what kinds of structures and appropriate we have to work towards that plan. One of the biggest questions that came up in the relative is what are we going to do with the downtown? We've got a village hall. It's not really something we can fix or we can update. So what can we do with that? And there is multiple inputs into who wants that property and how do they want to do it and all the surrounding areas. And that was why the board chose late last year to put out RFPs to develop a process to gather ideas. When those ideas come together, they become projects, and that's where your input starts to come, because you have to have something for people to react to as opposed to just a blank slate. In relationship to TIF districts, they're typically provided for doing projects that the village finds of value. And one of the big values that our board has consistently had for multiple years has been affordable housing and attracting and having subsidized housing. Frequently, to obtain subsidized housing, your community has to show some financial commitment or involvement in the project. When you use TIF money, you defer off benefits. Mike mentioned the Main Street property. The decision there was, rather than use TIF money, we would provide the property in association with it, and that when that project is completed, and that's immediately added, that value is immediately added to our tax rolls, and we will receive approximately $50,000 a year in funds that we can use to fix potholes, we can use to support all the other activities of the village. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. We also, excuse me, we also have questions about communication and participation. And so the question is, what will you do to create better communication from the board, I assume from the board to the community, and increase opportunities for public participation? And how would you propose using openings on committees to do that, understanding that there are current openings on committees? So let's start with Amanda.
Sure, thank you. So transparency and openness are things that I have always strived for on the village board. When I joined the board, packets that would come out for meetings came out on a Friday afternoon, late, and that those were for a Monday evening meeting, which left only Monday during the day, that's the business day, when you could call and ask questions, find out more information about a project or something you read. That was not enough time for residents to be aware of things and gather any community support they might need to come before the board. So I was one of the people who voted to move it to Wednesday afternoon to give a little more time so that word can get out. I love communication. I want people to be involved. So the other thing that we're doing now is we are redoing our website to make things easier to find. We want to put something on there that helps our community understand the development process and what stage each project is in. I want to, I have something I brought and I just wanted to show. There's a projects and tasks list. I don't know if you can see this at home, but at the end of every village board packet in the administrator's report, there's a big list of everything going on in the village and what stage it's at and all that. This is the kind of thing we want to put on the website and make it easily available to residents. We want to highlight in those stages everywhere that there would be opportunities for citizen input. We're all about transparency, and these are things that we are already doing to try to make it easier for people to know what's going on and communicate with us.
Thank you. Let's go to Tom.
I guess if you've known me and you know about me or you've worked with me, you would really appreciate how much I value transparency and having everybody have access to information. I've been a big proponent of the expansion and the development of OCA Media, making sure that this meeting today is being televised live, and it's available not just through your broadcast cable services, but it's also available through YouTube. Follow-ups to the meeting are going to be available by simply following the stream, and you can follow up information on it. Those were things that were not there years ago and that I've worked for and helped and support to make the community have that transparency to information and to see what's going on. The Village of Oregon deserves to have as much communication. People don't really want you to do push communications where you just push everything at them and fill up their mailboxes with countless emails and so forth. You have choices you can pick on the website, and you can go through and pick what communications you want to receive from the village. It's all there. The question is are people wanting to receive that, and how can we make that easily accessible to them?
Thank you. Sarah?
So I consider myself to be someone who is skilled at problem solving, and again, knocking doors, talking to people, and myself have felt it difficult to keep up with what's going on and easily finding information that it has been put out or communicated by the board or the village. So some simple things that I've come up with are on a monthly basis in our water and sewer bills, since they go out in envelopes now, it seems to me that it would be a low-cost solution to include updates every month. In January, do a forecast for the year of projects that are coming up and how to be able to participate. On a monthly basis, what's coming up in the next 4 weeks, how you can participate, where to find information. Quarterly, the same, and people are very receptive to this idea. I did a little research, and virtually I checked 5 other local communities, all of which have remote access to their board meetings. We do not. And board meeting times, again, those 5 other communities in our area, all but one have meeting times that start at 6 o'clock or later, which allows families, young families, people with kids that have to take care of their kids, feed their kids, people who work until 5. Many people are not able to get to our board meetings due to limitations, and we need to have better access there. And lastly, listening sessions and a dedicated phone line at the Village Hall that provides updated information regularly.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I think we need to find avenues to create community involvement before the board makes decisions. I think moving our meeting times to a later time than 5 o'clock makes a lot of sense. It was brought up on the board when I was there, and the board did not move on it. I think that getting our video conferencing equipment working so that people can participate remotely in board meetings makes a lot of sense. We've paid for it. It's been in this building. For some reason, it's, I guess, not working. But we were told that when we purchased this building and redid it a year ago, that we would have the ability to do remote conferences with residents, and they could dial in, and that's still not available, and that's unacceptable. I think we need to look at a comprehensive review of how we recruit people for our committees. As I look around the room, I see several people that I know have told me that they applied for committees and were turned down, and that's unacceptable, particularly when the village is saying, oh, we don't have enough people applying for committees. I applied last year for the Sustainability Committee, which when I was on the board, I authored the ordinance that actually created that committee and was the village board's representative on it. Yet the village board did not appoint me to that committee and let the committee sit open. That's wrong. It discourages participation. Board members who claim credit for the work that's done by their committees, that's wrong as well, because it discourages participation. And we need to stop.
Thank you. Lynn?
So I used to be a government teacher for 7 years, and let me tell you, the look on a high schooler's face when they get a letter back from an elected representative is priceless. And so when I started in my role on the village board, I made it a huge priority to respond to each and every request that is sent my way, either through email or telephone, following up, doing my very best to answer questions, connect people to those who have the information, because oftentimes I don't necessarily hold all of that information, and it has made a huge difference, I think. I also think when it comes to transparency and communication, We have to remember that people are busy. I have 3 kids. I don't have time to come to a board meeting on a normal, like if I wasn't on the board, most of the time because I'm doing bedtime and dinner and all of those things. And so what's the best way for the board to hear those concerns? It's to be out in the community. It's to attend all of the listening sessions. The Senior Center just had 3 listening sessions around the idea of a new facility. I was at each and every one of them, trying to make sure that I was connecting to people, going to events, supporting community organizations such as the Rotary, making sure that people feel like, wow, their village board members are around. I can easily get to them. I think that's really important because asking people to have the time to come sit in the village hall is a lot to ask for some families. I also think that sometimes when we talk about committees, we talk about people who have a really vested interest in a very specific idea, and that's awesome, but there's also a lot of people that have kind of a broad idea of what they want a committee to look at, and we have done that on the village board. We've had community input, and the board has sent things to those committees to explore, and I think that's a great way for our committees to incorporate themselves into the community.
Thank you. So we also have questions about, again, going back to taxes and services. So with growth comes the need for expanded village services. What village services do you think the village board and staff should prioritize? And which services would you cancel or not offer in a way to minimize taxes? We're going to start with Tom.
It's a difficult question. There's not anybody who's sitting up here today who would tell you they're in favor of increasing taxes. And actually, when it comes down to it, the village has very limited opportunities to increase revenues in any kind of minimal way. Budgets have to be balanced. You can't decrease taxes or lower taxes without reducing services. If you're going to reduce services, then you're going to start making hard choices. Do we stop filling potholes? Do we stop plowing snow? Do we stop servicing our community? Do we, I for one, we recently had a medical emergency in our house. I was really appreciative that the 911 call brought a police officer to support that call when the emergency staff arrived. It's important that we have services. There's always that balance. The actually opportunities, the prior board chose to implement taxes that were the basic low-hanging fruit. They were easy taxes. There's one of the few opportunities that the state legislature allowed. That low-hanging fruit has been taken. There is no real meaningful way that we can increase taxes beyond small incremental amounts that are allowed by the state legislature. And then in the end scenario, there will be hard choices coming for the Village of Oregon. We're a growing community. It's a dynamic community. There's going to have to be decisions made about how many police officers will we have, how much street work can get done, what services do we have to make. And those are going to be decisions that we will have to weigh one by one and try to sort through. And it's not just a blanket, this item or that item. So it's going to be hard decisions, and I think I'm in a position to help with that kind of analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike.
We should look at some of the services we provide and look at ways that we can provide them more efficiently. We did that last year with the mowing policy that the village passed. I believe we should do that again with our plowing policy. But ultimately, when it comes right down to it, I don't think it's up to me to determine what the village cuts or doesn't cut. I believe that we should put this before the voters. We can go to referendum. We can raise taxes via referendum. We should let the voters decide if they want to pay higher taxes with more, and get more services, or if they want to reduce their tax bill and their expenses, and the village will then have to look at what to cut. Along with going to referendum, I think we should repeal the 2 most regressive taxes we have, which are the streetlight tax and the wheel tax. The wheel tax, whether you drive a brand new Lamborghini or a 1960s Chevy truck, you're paying the same fee. And it's wrong. It's more regressive than our property taxes. We need to get those out. They were passed as a temporary thing, and somehow they're now going to appear to be becoming permanent. We need to put power back in the hands of our taxpayers and let them decide how much they're going to pay for village services.
Thank you. Lynn?
Okay, taxes and village services, that's a big one. I would love to sit up here and tell you that I want to reduce taxes and lower your tax bill, but I also don't know that that's a realistic promise to give the voters of Oregon, because the reality is that things are not getting cheaper. And when you talk about village services, you're talking about a police officer coming to your home when you're in need. You're talking about a street that's plowed when you have to get a sick kiddo to urgent care. You're talking about a park that needs to be maintained so that kids can play soccer and be with their friends and do healthy things that are safe and good for families to gather in spaces. And so it's important when we talk about village services that we don't just broad brush village services as this thing that we can play around with, because I don't take it lightly when it means that it could really affect the day-to-day lives of people who have chosen to live here. I feel like it's my responsibility as a village board member to remember those voices when I make decisions, to understand that there are people behind my decisions, and that when I choose to reduce a service, that I feel comfortable that someone might not have the service that they need. Healthy water, things that are safe for their kids to be around, the environment. Those are aspects of life that we can't take for granted and we can't just mess around with. I think it's important that we're really financially responsible. I don't want to throw money at things that aren't going to have a major impact. And so I just think we need to work hard to research, get ourselves informed, and make sure that we're spending our dollars in places that have the biggest impact and serve the people who we ultimately represent here on the board.
Thank you. Sara?
So this is, as Lynn said, a complex issue, and I will be the first to say when I don't know, and I don't know. I, however, am not afraid to educate myself, do the research, become knowledgeable, and make informed decisions. So there are many areas that you're talking about today or will be talking about today, this one included, that I don't have answers to this, but I'm willing to work hard and listen to people and what they want and need and how they would like to see those things accomplished. And again, do the research, do my homework, educate myself, and make informed decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go back to housing. So this question is going to be a little more pointed. Based on the questions, there's a concern among the people here that we have too many apartment buildings or that we are adding too many apartment buildings. And they are concerned about the increased traffic as a result of them as well. So the question is, what is your position on adding new apartment buildings to the village? Do you support new apartments? Do you believe apartments, we should not have any more new apartments, or do you have a nuanced approach to it? Lynn.
Okay, well, as a person who bought my first house just a number of years ago, let me tell you that buying a home right now is really hard to do financially. And so we need apartments. Whether we like it or not, it is the starter home of a lot of the new generation of homeowners. And if we don't have them here, they will go somewhere else. Single-family homes are not a future that we can rely on anymore. It creates a huge amount of sprawl and space. And then we have areas of our downtown that aren't being utilized as effectively as possible. And so I think we have to see apartments as a benefit for our community. It densifies specific areas. It brings people together. It is no longer that aspect of, not being able to afford a home. To be honest with you, a lot of times those rents are higher than my home mortgage is. It's a choice that people are making to live in an area that's more vibrant, that's more community centered. And so I am definitely for making sure that apartments are a part of our village, but also being respectful of the fact that our village is historic, and we do need to make sure that the things that we put in place reflect the culture and areas that we have. We have a planning commission that does a great job of making sure that those processes are looked at time and time again, and before it comes to the board, it goes through a huge process of review and making sure that it's going to abide by our ordinances and the rules that we've set up. As far as traffic goes, I think, again, when you put people downtown that are walking, maybe they're not going to use a car. And so that can sometimes adjust our traffic needs. And I think that's a benefit. We want more people walking around. We want more people in and out of our downtown spaces. And by putting their houses there, they're able to access those more often and in an easier way.
Thank you. Sarah.
Okay. So I think for me, the answer is there has to be a good balance and mix. And there has to be thoughtful decisions made about placement and, again, transitioning into historic neighborhoods and areas. You have to have services and businesses available to everyone with access, and maybe taking a step back and looking at the plans that are in place and how to implement them in the best ways to create that mix and balance is an approach that would be helpful.
Thank you. Tom.
The vision of Oregon, and one that I share, is that Oregon is a welcoming place to everyone. It's a community that welcomes and brings people to it, and we welcome all types. To really incorporate that vision, you have to have a broad spectrum of different kinds of housing being done, including rental properties, including affordable housing. You have to have all those things to bring those people to your community, and we value all those people. Oregon is a growing and dynamic community. Apartment living and apartment buildings is an important component of the kinds of projects that brings people to a community. They come here, they find the community, they like the community, they move on into housing. It's just sort of the natural progression of things. We have to have those kinds of housing and resources available to support the people so that people are able to not only live here and work here. We have to support a broad range of people. We have to have a broad range of approaches to receiving people into our community, and that requires welcoming all people and all different income levels.
Thank you. Amanda.
Yeah, so I think apartment buildings are an important part of providing a variety of housing options for people in our community. New apartment buildings are springing up because we have a lot of people moving here. We've talked about this before, and we're a desirable community to live in, and it's a happy problem to have. You don't want all of any one kind of housing, and in a sense, we're playing catch up because a lot of Oregon has been single family homes for a long time. And so now we're seeing apartment buildings going up as a way of catching up. We're also using them as infill projects, which are some of the greenest and most sustainable things we can do, because as we all know, sprawl can be a problem in communities. And so being able to go back and and densify our housing where there are gaps, that's a great thing. I think it's important to do. And while market rate housing, developers can come and build those things when we're talking about affordable housing. That's a more complicated thing. There's nuances. There's always nuances. So that's why we provide incentives for developers to jump through all those hoops to create that type of housing. Yeah, I agree with what's been said before.
Thank you. Mike?
23% of the village, according to the village's statistics, are having problems paying for their homes. So we can't really be turning the possibility of apartments or new housing or things away from the village. We need to get a greater stock of housing to help bring costs down for people. That said, apartments are just one piece in the puzzle. We certainly, given our proximity to Madison, as I mentioned earlier, don't need to be subsidizing apartment buildings at taxpayer expense. We can let them develop organically and perhaps maybe a little bit more slowly. I don't think anyone in the village, except maybe the village board, would object to that. We need to be sensitive to transitioning. So taking a 3 or 4 story apartment building and then dropping it in the middle of a 100-year-old neighborhood destabilizes a neighborhood. It doesn't bring the neighborhood together and build community. It actually starts tearing at the things that hold that neighborhood together. So when we're building new apartment buildings, we have to be aware of where they're being put. Do they fit in with the existing neighborhood? Do they step down in size so that there's not a 4-story building next to a 1-story house? Do they strengthen our community or do they weaken it? And that is a challenge for how we redevelop Oregon, but it's how we're going to strengthen our community in the long run.
Thank you. The next question concerns economic development. There's already been a fair amount of discussion among you about the need for economic development as far as tax revenue. So, question is, where do you see opportunities for commercial development in Oregon, and what kind of businesses do you think the village should be encouraging? I'm going to start with Mike.
Well, there's 2 types of business development that we need. We need to attract commercial storefront type businesses into our downtown area, which I think we can address by ensuring that anything that's built within the downtown area on the first floor includes storefronts. The Jefferson Crossing apartment building that was built a number of years ago just off of Main Street on Jefferson was a mistake. We let it be built without commercial properties on the first floor. Our downtown is small. There's no synergy between stores. In other words, you go downtown, you might stop in for lunch and then you hop in your car and you go home. You don't go shopping for an afternoon in our downtown because there's not enough stores there to keep you there. So we need to start looking at redevelopment of our downtown area in a way that we build a commercial base that reinforces one another. Second, we don't really have any industrial parks or space in our industrial parks anymore. So we need to look at where we can build industrial parks. The west side of town is available, but isn't very good in terms of access to transit corridors. The jumping Highway 14 on the east side of town won't be done for years. So we need to look, I think, south of town at perhaps building a new access onto Highway 14 and building a new industrial park south of town to start attracting businesses into the area that we can then use to hopefully lower taxes and expenses for our residents.
Thank you. Tom.
Commercial and retail development is an important and a critical element of maintaining a viable and active community. One of the difficulties we face in Oregon is the available space and the available locations you can have to actually create and build new retail sources. There are speculation about where and else we could grow and where else we could expand. All of those, every one of those items that have been mentioned talks about a lot of money. And when we're talking about restricting borrowing and restricting lending and incurring debt, there's a huge implication to it. The Village of Oregon Board is extremely reticent to buy more land. We don't have a great scenario of where we see that we make great opportunities in relationship to that. The idea that we could expand to the east is very limited. It would be extremely expensive. Going to the west, it doesn't really conducive to the kind of development that would be needed. So we have an ongoing problem. It's going to be something that's worked through. There are conversations that we have with those that have opportunities and have lands, but we are running out of that in source areas where we actually could do any kind of significant development. We're going to have to find it. We're going to have to encourage it, and we're going to have to find ways to create solutions that meet and provide the services that you have to have in a community.
Thank you. Amanda, or I'm sorry. Yeah, Amanda.
Thanks. So one of the problems that the village board has when we are trying to encourage businesses, and we know we want to encourage businesses to come in different forms, you know, the bigger manufacturing kind of things that would be in a business park, and also like storefronts where people do retail shopping. That's all important businesses to have in the community. Businesses tend to pay more taxes than people, and that helps reduce taxes by encouraging business. The problem we face is that we, as a village, don't own a whole lot of land, and it costs money to acquire that. So what we're looking at when we're talking about apartment buildings or businesses that come to town, that is a sale of land between two private parties. The village can't control that. So if one person sells land to another person and they say, I'm going to put a restaurant there, even though we have a bunch of restaurants around it, or if they want to put an apartment building when really we'd like to see a bakery or something else. We can't control that part. I mean, we control some zoning, right? That's something that we could work on, but the downtown district is already a business. It's already zoned business or mixed development. And, you know, we have to make sure that projects are legal according to our ordinances, if there's buffer zones that are necessary between adjoining properties and things like that. If they are within those bounds, all we can do is suggest changes to those projects. But here's where the TIF comes in. If those projects need money to happen, then the village has some power to say, you know what, we don't think this is a good project here, and so we're not going to give you that money. That's our tool for controlling and helping to bring the businesses we want to come to Oregon.
Thank you. Sara.
So I agree pretty much with everything that's being said here as far as bringing new business into Oregon. I think retail is important, services downtown, creating commercial space downtown. However, I think it all goes back to the downtown master plan and being very careful in how that's created and developed, so that decisions are made that are going to bring in businesses and allow or create spaces for businesses to come into the community that the residents can use, will need. And in addition to that, destinations for people from out of town to come into a restaurant that they've heard about, eat, and then retail shopping is available that is of interest to many different people. Additionally, again, I have a lot to learn. So as far as land and access and availability for industrial type businesses, I have a lot to learn there, but I think the idea of bringing in more industrial businesses to further tax income for the village needs to be explored and looked at and developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn?
So I think the first step in economic development is to acknowledge and encourage those that have already invested in our community. Our downtown has seen and does currently see a lot of really unique small businesses, people in our community who are putting their businesses downtown and then also living here. I think that says a lot about our community, that people feel comfortable to live and work and grow a small business all in the same area. And so I think we have to work really hard to listen to those voices of our small business owners already and do whatever we can to help them flourish. They're then going to go to their business community and say, hey, Oregon's a great place to put your business. I've got mine here and we're doing great. And so I think we have to start with what we have and then we have to grow. In addition, I think an industrial growth, it's awesome. I would highly encourage it, but I also think that we have to be smart about it. Putting something like an industrial park could be very encouraging, but if we can't fill that industrial park, we've then taken a large portion of village funds to grow infrastructure, water, sewer, electric, out into areas that might sit empty. And we've seen neighboring communities have that struggle where they've sort of created the industrial park in the hopes that someone will come, and then nobody does. And so I'm not discouraging it if it's something that we can do appropriately and responsibly. I'd be very interested in it. But I want to be very careful as a village board member not to build something in the hopes that they will come, but rather have fruitful discussions with business owners in the area and make sure that we're making really smart moves and encouraging businesses to come into our community who are going to honor the culture and community that we've already built here with what we have.
Thank you. In order to get one more question in, the next question, you're going to have a 1-minute limit. So this will be our last question, and then there'll be closing arguments. This question is public safety. Public safety is a high priority for the village. However, the Oregon Police Department has been understaffed for more than a year, and the fire and EMS facilities are stretched. What ideas do you have for addressing these issues? We're going to start with Lynn.
Public safety is a huge priority of mine. If you read any of my literature, it's on there. I was a daughter of a police officer for my whole life. I rode along with a police officer. You don't understand the struggle they are in until you are in that squad car and you are understanding some of the things they face. And our police officers are facing more and more challenges day in and day out, and they deserve our support. It's one of those aspects that when everything's going great, nobody talks about it, but when it goes poorly, boy, we're going to talk about it. And so I think it's my job to make sure that we do all that we can to support our police department, our fire and EMS, so that we don't have anything go wrong here, and that we are seen as a leader in Dane County in supporting those public service officers and safety officers and making sure that they feel cared for and respected by our village in the most ways that we can do that.
Thank you. Mike.
I think the fire, the EMS, and the police department have been doing a fantastic job in Oregon. I also believe that we should support them. I think that we also have to look at how we support them in a way that we can afford doing it. Those are tough choices. Every department that the village has is making choices over what it needs and what it can survive without. We have to submit our public service, our public safety institutions to those same choices. But when it comes to a question of money versus safety, I will always err on the side of safety.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thank you. Yes, I totally agree. I did a ride along with our police department, and they're doing a fantastic job. But they also can't afford to have 2 officers on at any given time, which means some patrol officers in the middle of the night are out there all by themselves. And one of the ways that we can support them is putting in a budget another position, so that when the police department needs it, they're not kidding, they really need it. So I absolutely support that, and I, just as Mike said, I will always err on the side of safety if given a choice. The fire department, I love. We just brokered a new agreement with the Oregon Senior Center. We brought the Village of Brooklyn back into that agreement that we had. They had left for a while, and we got together, we put our heads together, we brought them back in because multiple municipalities serve that. I want to do the same thing for our fire department because that's a multiple municipality organization.
Thank you. Tom?
I think there'll be a consensus across the board here that public safety is the #1 priority for any community. It's a tough choice. We need to find ways to fund those things. It's the kinds of decisions that you have to face when you're sitting on the village board and you look and try to find those ways that you can fund those things that are important to everybody and to the entire community. It's not going to be an easy decision. It's not going to be an easy process. We need to continue to find those funds and find those opportunities to support our police department, our fire department, and any public safety issue that comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sara?
So as a nurse within our community and a resident, all three of these areas and departments are high priority to myself as well. And I would also err on the side of safety versus cutting spending. I've experienced numerous times the excellent response and service of our EMS in our clinic when it was needed for life-saving action for patients that we have. I also have had experience with the police and was pleasantly amazed at what a fabulous job was done when we were having a patient who had a mental health crisis and we could not find a safe place for this patient to go. And the police did a fabulous job, has built a network for those type of situations and was so helpful. So I agree with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to move to closing arguments. Or not arguments. That's the lawyer in me, sorry. Closing statements. Mike, we're going to start with you.
I believe in making Oregon an affordable place to live, implementing sustainable practices, providing a more open and inclusive government, strengthening our downtown, and advancing public transportation. I was elected to the village board in 2021. I worked with people from all walks of life and served on committees including Public Works, Finance and Personnel, Sustainability, and the Council on Aging. I took the job seriously and came to meetings prepared with questions and comments so I could make informed decisions on behalf of my constituents. If reelected, I will do the same. I believe Oregon is a great town with a bright future. I would ask for your vote in this election.
Thank you. Amanda.
Hi, thank you. I'm running for my 4th term, and I love this community. I have, I think, demonstrated ways that I am being responsive to constituents, and I want to continue the work that I started on the Transportation Committee. We have a grant that we just got to plan what that's going to look like. We need to expand that for residents. We are a growing community. Many communities that are much smaller than us have some form of transportation. We've got to address the Oregon Senior Center. That is something that residents have asked for, and it's a need. The buildings is aging, right? We need to build something new. That's not something that we can delay because there's costs associated with that too. The prices are not going down, they're only going up. And I would like to fulfill the requests in the sustainability report that came from the Sustainability Committee. So we are building for our kids and our grandkids. Thanks.
Thank you. Sara.
So again, I'm new to this whole process. I believe I can bring a unique perspective and knowledge base to the board with my varied professional experience I've gained over the years. I have strong problem-solving skills. I have the ability to look outside the box, see a big picture, things down the road, a domino effect, either positive, negative, or both. And I look forward to, if elected, to represent all citizens, be a voice for them, and make thoughtful, informed, responsible decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
As I mentioned in my opening comments, I've been involved in a lot of committees and boards, clubs throughout the history of my 38 years here in the Oregon community. Successful boards and committees have a spirit of collaboration, cooperation, and work hard to come to consensus. I will tell you that in the last 10 months, when the village board comes to have to talk about issues and discussions, we frequently start with a lot of disagreement amongst the board members. We come together, we talk about it, we find solutions to those problems, and we come to a consensus. With 40 years of insurance and finance experience, I've frequently been called upon to look to how will someone behave in the future. And the most reliable factor has always been is how have people behaved in the past. I look to see that I've got that experience, I've shown that experience, I have the collaboration, cooperation, and consensus that building that's going to be needed for this job.
Thank you. And Lynn?
So again, I want to start by thanking the Oregon Area Progressives, but also all of you who have attended and my fellow candidates. This is a really awesome opportunity to dig into a lot of the issues that we face and have a really fruitful discussion about different ideas. And it provides voters a great opportunity to see what you're looking at when you look at a ballot on April 2nd. If you're voting for me on April 2nd, you're going to be voting for a board member who's active, who goes to events, who's at meetings, who's researching, who's asking questions, but most importantly, who's listening. I think it's important that as a representative of the Village of Oregon, that I sit and listen to what people need, what they're concerned about, what keeps you up at night, what wakes you up at night. What are the things that you think might be coming down the road that you're nervous about? That's my job. And if you're voting for me on April 2nd, you'll be voting for someone who's listening to those concerns.
Thank you. And that concludes the candidate forum portion of today's event. Thank you all for your participation. And I'll be turning this over to Carlene to talk about the constitutional amendments that will be on our ballot.
Can you see me? Can I just turn this around? Those aren't working. They're not on? Yes, they are. They're on for her, but they're not on in the room. That's okay. So, hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Carlene Beshen, and I am part of the Oregon Area Progressives. You should have received a little flyer that looks like this when you came in. There are 2 questions on the April ballot that are not just yes/no questions with no consequence. These are questions that will change our state's constitution. They are constitutional ballot questions. And so it's important for you to know what the consequences are for those ballot questions. Question 1, I just got new glasses, so pardon me, I'm figuring it out. Question 1 reads, use of private funds in election administration. Shall Section 7(1) of Article 3 of the Constitution be created to provide that private donations and grants may not be applied for, accepted, expended, or used in connection with the conduct of any primary, election, or referendum. What that means, really, is that there cannot, our village board, our village clerk, Candy, cannot apply, nor can any clerk apply for a grant that will help to administer the elections, to buy PPE, to buy pens, to buy other kinds of things that are needed in order to administer the election. Now, this is, first of all, not something that should be on the Constitution. This is something that our legislature should be providing the funds for, which they're not doing. They're not fully funding the elections, and they're putting a constitutional question onto our ballot that would change what our clerks can and cannot do in terms of getting the funds that they need in order to administer elections safely and securely. Some of that money can be used to pay staff who can work overtime to count ballots, other kinds of things like that. So there are 4 reasons here that are listed. This came right off the League of Women Voters website. This is not something I made up. This is a trusted organization that is not supporting question 1, nor are they supporting question 2. Question 2 reads, election officials shall Section 7(2) of Article 3 of the Constitution be created to provide that only election officials designated by law may perform tasks in the conduct of a primaries, elections, and referendums. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been a poll worker. I am not a hired election official of the Village of Oregon. I am a poll worker trained by the League of Women Voters, trained by the official Wisconsin Election Commission training to be able to help administer elections. The clerk is still in charge. The election, they have a specific name. The chief inspector, thank you. The chief inspector for the election, and there's a chief inspector in each polling place who has a lot of training, is in charge of each election polling place. But there are a lot of election workers who are needed to help administer elections. During COVID, I sat out in front of the old village hall with a poncho on and literally took ballots. I received absentee ballots and took them in and gave them to the clerk. And if there was someone who wanted to stay in their car and vote, I went inside the building. I got the chief inspector. She or he came out and administered the ballot. I did not do that. That person did. But what this means is if only specific election officials can administer elections, there'll be much longer lines. There'll be a lot more that keeps us from being able to cast our votes efficiently. And what this really does is discourage voting. It's one more way of limiting access to the ballot. So the League of Women Voters and the Oregon Area Progressives are both strongly encouraging you to vote no on these ballot questions. We do not need to change this in our Constitution. If there are things that need to be changed about our elections, we need to let our Wisconsin Election Commission know about those things and let them write the rules and give those to the clerks so that our elections can be administered safely and securely. So strongly encourage you to vote no. And so now I'm taking off that hat. I'm going to move over here, and thank you for coming, and thanks Sheri for being our moderator today. Thank you, Judge Pollock, and to the candidates who came, thank you for your time as well. We really appreciate you being here. And that concludes the forum. There are refreshments in the hall if you'd like to have some. There are also brochures out there about the Oregon Area Progressives if you'd like to become more involved with us. There's lots of ways to let us know. Thanks so much for being here.